Thank you for this opportunity, Stat Media Group. The discussion topic is really very exciting. Changemakers of tomorrow, redefining EV logistics. I think all four of us have already had a panel discussion outside while having coffee. But we'll try to deliberate on some stuff that we spoke about. First of all, thank you and welcome to all the panelists.
Thank you.
They are very respectable people in their own organizations. I think we have Manjula from Delta. We have Manuj ji, who's from Omega Seiki, and we have Deepak, who's from Ather Energy. All of them are looking at, the supply chain function in their respective companies. Starting with you, Manjula, what I understand is Delta largely is in two businesses. Okay, one is on the charging infra side, and the other is on the power electronics side, for electric vehicles. And what I also understand is, you guys are there across segments. So whether it is two-wheelers, three-wheelers, pass cars, trucks, trucks as well as buses on the EV front. And even today, despite localization, despite PMP, and a lot of push for localization, import still continues to be a very, large portion of the entire supply chain, especially with respect to electric vehicles. So it's not only batteries, but many other parts also which get imported, especially when you talk about trucks and buses as such. Maybe on the two and three-wheeler side, we've seen a lot of localization already happen, but on the other side, we're still seeing a lot of imports coming in.
Yeah.
There are a lot of uncertainties. We saw Red Sea crisis, wherein there were time delays, jack up in terms of costs. Again, changing the goalposts in certain things like PMP for charging infra with respect to certain components. So in this scenario, how is it that you guys plan your supply chain? I know it's not an easy answer or a one-line answer, but if you could delve into the issues, challenges that you face, and what is it that you try to do to ensure that you bring in efficiency into the system?
So thank you for that. I represent the organization Delta Electronics. The focus is energy infrastructure solution, where EV is a part of that specific line of business.
Right.
So when we talk about electric vehicle, as you rightly said, there are two streamlines which we focus in Delta. So one is basically on the charging solution. When we touch upon the charging solution, we have solution for product and solution for two-wheeler, three-wheeler, four-wheeler, and then as well as truck and buses. So first I'll take up the charging part, charging solution part. So it is an unorganized or non-standardized segment.
Right.
Having the technology in place, having the manufacturing in place, delivering the technical requirement itself is the biggest challenge. So
Sure.
now EV is the flavor of the season. I mean, it's such a wonderful industry where it touches consumer, the end user. We are the end beneficiaries.
Right.
And also it influences the government, the running government, the ruling government also gets influenced with
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
And then the other beauty of this industry is you also have sustainability connected to it. Everybody would take this as the industry where it can help us to cut down the emission rates, and then carbon emission would be controlled, and the RE100, all those things. So
Scope 3
all
is
in
something.
all, it is an ecosystem move, a transition, which we as an industry, it should be done.
Sure.
So when we are looking into these kind of aspects, it is not one person or one organization which can drive this thing. It's a ecosystem which would really impact these kind of scenarios. So talking about the charging infrastructure, we didn't have any regulatory requirement or local norms in order to qualify. So we used to have technology transfer done from the corporate, and then we started localizing, and then we used to manufacture. There were no as such certification requirement which was defined, and there were no standardization in terms of technicality, deliverables was not there. But as you rightly touched upon on the PMP activities, there are the components which needs to be adhered as per the local norms.
Yes.
So that is also there in the picture. Having the right component itself is a challenge. Now you really need to localize that component and then bring out the technology. It adds to it.
Right.
And then the other view is, at least two-wheeler and three-wheeler, you have sizable quantities where you can plan the action. Whereas in terms of buses deployment, purely dependent on the government norms.
State transport
And then
undertakings,
trucks, it is proactive, or the innovation which is coming from the OEMs, they really want to cater to the market, so that's the reason. And in terms of number, it is quite small.
Absolutely.
So gearing up in terms of the component level or the logistic level, it is quite challenging. Uncertainty comes into picture. And in couple of end users, they prefer country of origin should be some specific country. And then local norms, in order to get the benefit of the localization thing, they insist. So these nitty-gritties will push a lot of challenges for us to bring out the technology and the product timely, right? So that also becomes a bottleneck in the entire value chain, I would say. When we are seeing the adaptability of vehicles, infrastructure becomes the major concern. I'm very confident, even if I have a vehicle which is 15-year-old, if I go to fuel station, fill the fuel, I'm good to go, right?
Yeah,
I'm not sure if I'm taking a EV vehicle where I'm commuting, to what extent I'll be able
range
to.
anxiety is
Range
still-
anxiety, yeah.
So that is one of the biggest thing. At least whenever it comes as the home charging, I'm confident that I know the travel distance, and then I'm gearing up for it. The fleet operators, the logistic, the last mile delivery guys, for them, it is a very crucial, it is like oxygen behind it in case if it is ran
Right.
out with the
Right.
charging fuel. So those things adds to it. So logistic part, it is very challenging. Predicting, planning is a biggest challenge in terms of infrastructure. And then the value engineering. One person would expect additional thing, it should remotely work, I should be able to do the interoperability, the payment
Lot of
access should be
customization.
customization. So that also will be a challenge. So it's an ecosystem. We have the challenges which we really need to address as a community in order to see the outcomes. So that comes in the infrastructure part. If you touch upon the component side, we also work as the component supplier for a couple of OEMs.
Sure.
But currently, localization becoming a norm, we still have a challenge. If I take 20% only, we'll be able to get it from local, and then 80% of the component dependency still it is there from the outside itself. Though Delta has a manufacturing hub established in Krishnagiri, it's a very big setup. They're focusing at Asia's biggest manufacturing setup, and then wherever there are the challenges, they're transferring the line in order to manufacture over here in India, and then Make in India norms also triggering and then enabling us to focus on manufacturing aspects. But in spite of all those things, last 3-4 years, it's only 20% of the component which we are able to localize, and still the major component, like 80%, again, the import, which is enabling us to fulfill the requirement. So there are the challenges, probably evolving, troubleshooting, and then bringing the technology in an Indian version, the policies getting relaxed. This could be the resolution over a period of time. That's what I would say.
So are you saying that when you say that only 20% is localized,
Yeah.
you mean to say in the entire chain of you making those components? So when you talk about your tier 2s and tier 3s, you are saying that you are still dependent on imports for many of those to ensure that, you know, the component gets
Exactly.
in the complete form.
We
Okay.
have solutions, like you can switch on the car with the onboard charger and then the AC chargers. We have the solution for that thing. We have the thermal management system where
Right.
the moment,
Yeah.
and then energy conversion also is there in Delta. So for a complete vehicle, you have the powering solutions, you have the thermal insulation system, and then also we have the conversion system. So all in all, though we have the solution to give the required component in time, it's a challenge. So it's in stages, we are formalizing the Make in India. But having said that thing, volumes, pricing, availability of the raw material, XYZ parameters, still the hindrance is 20% and 80% combination, which is showing it up. Yeah.
Interesting. Manujji, you know, coming to you, you know, you are one of the large players in the E3-wheeler space. And you also have, you know, MK1, which is your small commercial vehicle, you know, which has been there for quite some time. Largely, you know, kind of responsible for last mile logistics, as Manjula also touched on. And with growing implications of ESG, BRSR reporting becoming compulsory going forward, people looking at scope 3 norms, I think, you know, it's going to be very, very important, and slowly, gradually, we'll actually see the last mile chain move to electric. You know, maybe whether it's 3-wheelers, whether it is 4-wheelers, but at the end of the day, you will see them move to almost near zero emission vehicles. Now, in that case, you know, what we have seen is, as I said, you know, the policy came in the form of FAME. There was FAME 1, then FAME 2, again got
EMPS.
extended by 2 years. Then PME drive.
Yeah.
You know, again in PME drive, there were allocations basis, you know, vehicle segments. And, you know, as we discussed outside, one fine day you come to know that, you know, subsidies got exhausted for the year. And there is a sudden drop in demand. So those kind of scenarios, you know, how do you overcome these challenges or, you know, these scenarios in your day-to-day planning? Because I think this is the need of the day. You know, whether people accept it or not, from an outside-in perspective, it looks very glamorous, looks very good. But when you actually look at, you know, getting more deeper into this and understanding how the implications of this will be from a supply chain perspective, I think, you know, we would want to understand more from you as to how do you, you know, plan these things, or what kind of measures do you take to minimize the impact of these things on, you know, the overall cost, because at the end of the day, it will boil down to the cost of the vehicle.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good evening once again. Thanks, Hemalji, I think, for such kind of wonderful site off. And I think you already, you know, just spoke about that. So we had over a cup of tea, long deliberations we were together doing. So we were joking among us that we already had a close to 40-45 minutes of, you know, the sharing of thought, discussions. And moreover, ours is a last panel. So I think one of the panelists in the previous discussion said that he's connecting dots. So I think now our aspect is to wrap up the things and very nice discussions. Thanks to Stat Media. So Hemalji, I think very important point. I think we are discussing logistics efficiency, the subject which is of paramount importance. When I say that, the reason being, we are touching the topic which is occupying $320 billion of the kind of capping in India as this at the current financial year. And even if I was going through very carefully the details, and I think that has been shared by one of the panelists, I think serial number 4 or something. So that even if you take close to 10% of the year-on-year basis growth, so it is expected to be reaching to $500 billion. When I'm saying that, I'm only trying to connect first of all, that how is this overall ecosystem looks like,
right,
which we are discussing as a whole, and we will certainly come to the points that what are the kind of drivers, the kind of bottlenecks which are, you know, limiting its kind of, you know, further sort of explorations. So logistics, I think, Mr. Hemal, even I think let's little bit go back to 4 years close to COVID scenario, the pandemic. Sure. I think we never thought or we never imagined the kind of, you know, this monster which approached us, which was not at all designed, not right, even thought by someone else.
Right.
And be it a kind of disruption in terms of COVID, be it kind of geopolitical, which is happening around us every time, whether it's a kind of Israel, it's a kind of Ukraine, Russia, every time when we open up, we wake up in the morning, we are finding amidst kind of chaos which is taking place globally. Added to that, what I think you also very rightly pointed out, the price kind of escalations. So I'm trying to connect the dots by saying that now we are living in this VUCA world, there is a kind of major disruptions happening, and be it a geopolitical, the price escalation scenarios, and business continuity process is now going to be very, very critical. And logistics being on the forefront, we already had some numbers, very reasonable good numbers, which states that if we have to eat away that pie, because there is a large pie looking available in front of us, and I think that's what we were touching. Very recently, I am very happy to see that we are sitting here and discussing about a logistics framework. Of course, for a supply chain, there are quite major deliberations. So certainly there is a kind of lot of uncertainties into the logistics space, because in my opinion, because I come from a supply chain background, so I beg pardon if I'll be a little bit more biased towards supply chain guy, because the supply chain guys hold the fraternity here. They can understand the kind of pain which comes into that. But that pain is actually the pain of the logistic guy, because he's the last link into the value chain. And the buck stops at there only. Supply chain has done his job, planning has done his job, warehousing is there in place. But we normally try to point a finger on the guy, but actually he is not a, the culprit, he's actually the victim for that. And when I say this, there has to be a proper synchronization and the coordination of these 4 important pillars in any organization. I have had experience of working in internal combustion engine for close to 23 years. I come from Hero MotoCorp as in my previous organization, which is the world's largest manufacturer. And now I am into EV space. We are doing manufacturing of three-wheeler, which is L5 category. And slowly we are coming up for our two-wheeler and then for the four-wheeler, that's a future prospectus. So having had the flavor of in ICE or in EV, either in four-wheeler commercial, three-wheeler, two-wheeler, I am giving logistic as a very, very critical juncture in terms of this. It has been and it was earlier also, but somehow I think the kind of, it has not occupied the right chair. The logistic, it has always been the backbench, but now very recently, when we were hit badly by the kind of disruption, and when now the people have started talking about the business continuity process as a whole, now we are taking out the subjects that, okay, we need to point out this, we need to have a logistics guy sitting on the board, or logistics guy sitting, occupying chair parallel to the supply chain guy. The reason being, he's a very important, he's the last link. Buck will stop there. So this is something I think, first of all, the challenges other than the external stakeholders, which you also very rightly pointed out, whether it's a kind of government policy formulation, whether it's kind of sustainability, we touch upon that. The ESG framework is not only a buzzword, it's a very, very important interface. I come from EV industry, and very rightly Hemalji has mentioned that in a very, very crucial way, that we recently had the experience of, then there is a policy of suddenly there is a capping of some 80,000, the vehicles. So now I'm touching about the planning part, which you said that how it is going to impact the logistics guy. See, until and unless there is a symmetric pattern or there is a kind of uniformity, if there is a valleys, then there is, we are not able to come out of that particular logistics inefficiencies. We are talking a lot about this, we are deliberating in and out, day in, day out, that there has to be logistic efficiency, cost down, efficiency up model. But we are not giving that emphasis and importance to the internal factors. There are external factors of policy formulation. There is a government body, there is an ecosystem external to the organization, which is, but my point is, let us try to indulge more and set our house in order, which is your internal stakeholders, before you pass on that buck to the external stakeholders. So internal factors is something very primarily and the basic stepping stone which need to be taken care in terms of making sure that we are climbing the stairs perfectly. And then in EV space, if we are little bit focusing on the EV space, which is little bit different, like she rightly said that it has got a more interface with respect to the sustainability aspects, and there are regulatory frameworks. FAME 1, FAME 2, then EMPS was there, then EPM drive which came into picture, and I was quoting some time back in between, sorry for building out that story. So we certainly came to know that the capping is no more in the existence. We certainly got a pop-up. So now you tell me, whatever better or the best planning, you have a control towers, you have a digital tools available, you have AI ML in place, you have four-party logistics or third-party logistics available. So you cannot expect an efficiency model from the logistics. So we have to have a complete sync or the orchestra which is playing music of internal stakeholder as well as external stakeholders. And since this particular theme is with respect to the EV industry, so I am again and again touching. So EV framework demands that the policy framework, the interface, the collaboration of government's bodies with the manufacturers. I think I have had a chance in the last couple of months back when there was a discussion of how the policy framework in the Vigyan Bhavan can take place, where they invited some, I luckily got a chance to be there. So that was kind of appreciable step, where they are now started having a dialogue. I mean, how we can together travel the milestones, how we can collaborate with each other. The only objective is, because this logistics is a boon if it is a properly worked out, synced, and it can turn out to be a very fatal and brutal if it is a mismanaged. So I say that, and I am figuring it out again, that there has to be a very right juncture of your planning, of internal stakeholders, your synchronization, and then inviting, once you are setting your house, and then you need to make sure that in EV we are taking government's body, we are aligning with that. We are, see, they are also embracing us, and we need to also little bit join the hands. And other than that, I think in terms of digitalization, which is another aspect, see, first basic primary work has to be done, and then we can definitely go for kind of the digitalization, embedded technology structures, which is of course, which will boost up this kind of cost advantages, because if we see that in terms of EV, there is a kind of regulatory framework, even if you are shipping for your OBL. When I'm discussing this, so I'm not only saying for IBL, I'm talking about the OBL, reverse logistics, and third party or fourth party logistics. So all has to be in the complete framework. So there, the technological interface will only help us in taking the cost advantages derivative. But before that, the basic hygiene will be what we are deliberating, that little bit sort of that homework, planning work, and keeping in mind the kind of disruption which is there in the ecosystem, which will only help in setting your house in order. So I think that is something, the framework, which need to be little bit addressed.
Thanks for that elaborate response, Manuj ji, really appreciate that. Deepak, sorry to keep you waiting for such a long time. I had this question in mind for a long time, have been reading this a lot, but I really do not know, would want to first factually check out with you, and then, would want to understand your perspective. What I've read is, now if you look at the two-wheeler industry, especially the e-two-wheelers, there is a critical volume that has been achieved. We also have a reasonable population of e-two-wheelers on ground now. And, we are reading a lot of stories, or we are reading a lot of stuff with respect to issues, with respect to service, with respect to, maintenance of vehicles, etc. And wherein, especially batteries or some very critical parts, wherein if there is an issue, you in the sense, the industry is finding it difficult to, kind of get it back to the source, that is yourself, work on it or refurbish it, and then, kind of send it back to the customer. And in e-commerce industry today, because of the scale or volumes it has kind of reached, reverse logistics is not a very big challenge, and they've been able to master it. But when it comes to EVs, what I hear is it is a challenge, and there are many players who were present in it earlier but are now not wanting to be a part of it. Is it right? And if yes, what is it that you guys are doing, or how is it that you feel this can be kind of sorted?
Sure. So before I start, I just want to clarify that Ather Energy is an Indian company because lot many people think that it's an MNC. So yeah, it is an Indian company. And yeah, Hemal, like till April 2024, everything was perfect in terms of reverse logistics.
Okay.
April, something happened in the logistics side, and suddenly everything went haywire.
Right.
In terms of reverse logistics of battery packs, which I'm talking about, OBL downstream part.
Right.
All players who were ready to take earlier stopped taking it suddenly.
Wow. Okay.
And in Ather Energy, we truly believe in refurbishing or bringing back whatever is in warranty. We'll have to see what is happening, and we'll have to repair it and then give it back as well. So we don't have anything as just in the first instance, we don't scrap anything.
Of course.
So yeah, April to June, it was a tough situation. Even till July. And also the traditionally called premium logistics service providers also funked big time. You wouldn't believe that reverse logistics on-time pickup within 2 days is just 25%. So with that in mind, and you might also be seeing many customers complaining, not especially us, but in general, that service is getting delayed and all those things, right? Although we give a loaner pack, EVs give a loaner pack, and then but still for a customer, they will look at the entire TAT. When I reported the issue, when it has been resolved fully. Right. Due to this reverse logistics cut TAT, one thing is on-time pickup within 2 days itself is a challenge, has become a challenge, even after paying a premium, right? Even after that, TAT is again a problem.
Okay.
What we heard was network congestion was there, and service providers were not ready for that kind of a volume. Not us, but in general for all across industries. They were not ready. And then during Diwali time also, it was at peak. Literally so many trucks were just on standby, they couldn't unload, and they were giving priorities to high value customers kind of a thing.
Okay.
First unload them and send it, and then because the penalty clauses were high as well.
Sure.
So for reverse, this has been a consistent issue, and we tried out with many MNC companies as well, although they are coming out with some solution, but that is 15x costlier than what we were earlier paying. So now that is the need of the hour in EV reverse logistics side, outbound. where we need a solution, because ultimately whatever we pay, we might be recovering in some way, right? And that will ultimately hit
Go to the customer.
or if it is under warranty, company has to take a hit. So yeah, reverse logistics has been a challenge since April, and we are still waiting for a solution. And who are ready to do it
It's
are
15x.
either not having a better service coverage or service level,
Okay.
and their on-time delivery is also around 75%, 65% kind of.
Okay. So it's like
It's a very
half-baked
dicey
solution.
situation.
Yeah,
Whereas in battery cells part, in upstream part, I see a lot of stabilization happening in the upstream part in terms of import of cells and all. Personally, in the past 3 years, which I have seen, a lot of maturity has come into the system as well. Old issues are still there to close, but at least new issues are not popping up in the upstream part. And compared to Manjula, I'm a happy person in my side, because Ather Energy has highly localized parts in terms of numbers of BOM parts. So in that way, it doesn't bring more uncertainty into my system.
Is it also because, when you talk about cells, etc., wherein, it still needs to be imported, the share of organized play of logistics or big boys, in that space is really high, and hence managing does not become very difficult. But when it comes to, reverse logistics, because though you may have a e-card doing it, at the end of the day, it is attached to someone and who would actually do it for them. So from that perspective, since the leg or the chain is really high, and plus, what I understand basis our discussion is the volumes are not very high, and hence, it'll always be partial truckload or less than truckload. So this, further adds to, kind of challenges, which in case of cell may be very different, right?
Right. So initially for cells, I'll close that loop. For cells, initially it was like the cell manufacturer dominated industry kind of a thing. They were rationing out to Indian companies as such.
Right.
They were giving higher preference for global companies as such.
Okay.
And also typically what they do is they also have an upper hand in selecting the freight forwarder whom they want.
Okay.
So in that way, they also have a benefit, and they were able to pass on some benefit to us in terms of pricing as well.
Sure.
And it was better for them in terms of operations, because they were able to coordinate better.
There is some amount of certainty.
Synergy is there, and also consolidation of business is also there for them.
Sure.
So in that way, only problem was the allocation which they used to give to us earlier was very less, because
Now it
first
is-
priority was for global companies as such. But now they have started to gain confidence in Indian industry as EV industry as such. So
Right.
the volume which they can allocate to us has increased
Okay.
a lot. That was in the part of cells. When it comes to reverse logistics for battery packs, domestic, the major issue which I see is for B2C, it is a different ball game altogether. So they have their own entities, and they have very dark store kind of concept as well. They have small hubs over there. They make some individual pickups, auto pickups or two-wheeler pickups, whatever is there, they do it. Whereas for EV, especially battery packs, it's a DG cargo.
Yes.
Right? So ever since before April, they were picking it up in their regular vehicles.
After that incident.
And after that, we don't know what exactly happened, but they denied taking it up as well. And another thing is that what I see is in logistics entities as such, I see among 3PL players, a lot of fragmentation has happened.
Yeah, it has.
You have many players now in domestic market, small to big.
Yeah,
So
regional
now
players,
thing is that we have some players who are good in west because they have a higher volume in west, whereas they are not good in south. So we are ending up having tie-ups with multiple players, and that is why for reverse logistics, the location where they are having coverage, they don't have business over there. Because of that business, they are not able to pick up is one part of it, and DG cargo is another part of it.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Very interesting points, I would say. Manjula, coming back to you, you spoke about, especially on the infra part, wherein you are working with many of these companies, who are in the last mile logistics space.
Yeah.
Now, you have a manufacturing unit, which is up north, in Himachal Pradesh, if I'm not wrong.
It is in Rudrapur.
In Rudrapur, okay, sorry.
Uttarakhand.
Yeah, in Uttarakhand, in Rudrapur. Now, when you talk to these companies, they will have their plans, of opening dark stores or, opening mother warehouses, wherein they would want to deploy this charging infrastructure.
Sure.
So is the plan actually largely sacrosanct, with respect to the schedule of implementation, or you face a lot of hiccups there also, and hence planning for these organized set of players is also a challenge?
Lucky, yes. I mean, in that, we'll have a system integrator in place. They would take the complete infra, setting it up. I mean, including the charger. Charger would be a part of it. Otherwise, they would map the roads where the routes where
Where they
the
are
commutation
gonna
would
fly,
be there.
yeah.
Yeah, the warehouse and then the delivery and the hubs. All these things will be mapped. Basically, system integrator would run the entire project. He would be accountable, and then he would outsource the other activities to them. So, at least 1 quarter ahead, we would get the projections. And then we all have witnessed there's a change in Amazon, there's a corporate responsibility comes into picture. So they really want to change
Right.
the corporate, the fleets also into EV. So such kind of opportunities are there. All the e-commerce people, they're getting up, and all the food delivery, two-wheelers are getting transition to fleet. So this is one segment where you see the rapid changes. I mean, if you see the four-wheeler passenger vehicle, less than 10% penetration.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely.
And in terms of buses, it's very, very small.
Very small.
So there is a data which says 20% of the entire pan-India transportation is what under government. So 80% of our bus commutation and bus transportation is private.
Yeah, it is. It
Yeah.
is.
So
Absolutely.
the FAME thing, still it needs to be percolated and then spread across for that 80% of the transition.
Agree.
So whatever road transport corporation, that do not completely in pan India, we can see prominently in Maharashtra, in Karnataka, the road transport corporations getting replaced. Otherwise, lot of transition and acceptability spending, and it could be any challenges, it could be range anxiety. We also get to see the accidents, fire accidents, and then people getting shocked. So such kind of user interface, user ease also needs to be developed. So keeping that aside, I mean, coming back to your the logistic part question, yes, these are the targeted segments which are coming up with their projections, but it is consistent. At least I'll get to know 1 quarter ahead before deploying. So I'll be able to map my logistics and then supply chain very effectively for those deliverables.
Very interesting.
And then apart from in the spread, where there is a logistic thing, only certain models, for example, it is light commercial vehicle or two-wheeler. So the focus is very clear. Which are those requirement in terms of infra, what charger they need, what is the value proposition in terms of voltage and current. So that is known. So based on that, it is easy for us to prep up much in ahead. So at least consistency and then the continued forecast is there in such kind of segments, I would say. Yeah.
Very interesting. So basically what you're trying to say is, if we look at the B2B part, which is there, there we are seeing more and more organized play coming in, and it's becoming much more mature as a market. Predictability is getting better. Possibly they have systems in place, processes in place, plus at the end of the day, as you said, there is commitment to ESG, climate, which is pushing that, and this will keep happening. But when you talk about more B2C in nature, where a normal customer gets involved, there you are still seeing a lot of issues crop up, and kind of demand patterns are different, and hence kind of aligning supply chains becomes a little difficult.
So B2B, it's a revenue generating. A downtime in the charger, they just can't afford. I mean, it impacts complete subsequent trigger for the entire value chain of the business. Whereas in terms of passenger vehicle, he or she would not be going ahead. I mean, they know their limitation, they know their range, what extent need to cover. In case if they're planning for a travel, which is like 300, 400 kilometers, they would really need to map the charging
the
infrastructure
charging infra is.
availability.
Yeah.
So there probably it would take much more time in order to get the penetration and acceptability. So that could be one of the segment.
Two things, one good thing that has happened is across now CCS2 is like
Standardized.
an acceptable standard, so which has solved, quite a few things. Second, as you rightly said, range anxiety, hence mapping the charging infra, etc. What I also would like to understand is, today maybe we are in a situation because it's more like a chicken and egg story. We do not have critical volumes on road. But when we actually look at segments like two-wheelers, especially, when I look at, say, scooters, almost 15% of scooters are electrified. And this is when I'm talking about high speed. If I actually include low speed, it will be close to 25, 26%. So which is phenomenal. And with the kind of expectation that we have going forward, we will actually start seeing a critical mass coming in, especially, on the two-wheeler front. PVs is still slow. And as you rightly mentioned, STUs, which is more B2B in a way, because, every bus terminal may possibly have their own charging infra.
Yeah.
So, that's largely taken care, by the concessionaire in the GCC model. And again, on the three-wheeler front, wherever it is organized, it is fine. But what about, three-wheeler autos or the ones which are used for public transport? How do you, kind of plan infra for such applications, because that's going to be really dependent on A, subsidy, B, unfortunately in India, despite, kind of deregulation of fuel prices, there is still a huge component of tax which ensures that, your fuel prices at a particular level, despite crude prices going haywire. And because of Russia, Ukraine, as as Sir explained, gas prices have also, gone northwards. And hence, viability of CNG is also come under question mark, which means better for EVs in a way. But still the B2C part is something, which is very, very difficult to map.
I think very right. I was very carefully listening, and that reminded me of the kind of pain when she was talking about, B2B, B2C. See, like I come from a EV three-wheeler manufacturers. So I was linking that very, in the backward integration, that how much difference does it make when you are talking of your same product going to B2B and then B2C. See, it is sometimes we as a OEMs manufacturers gets wonderstruck that same set of vehicles, same set of conditions, same type of ecosystem, when it is placed from B2B, gets an entirely different perspective when the same conditions are offered to B2C. See, and it's not very difficult to, at least to understand and to extrapolate that how it is going to impact in the coming time also. At one point of time, B2B is largely into the fleet sort of things, right?
Yeah.
The kind of vehicle abuse is entirely different. B2C is a different set of customer who is very conscious, like the Bangalore market is very prominent. And I'm sure all must be very wonderstruck to note that for passenger, L5 passenger category, I'm talking about three-wheelers, cargo and passenger. Passenger is the utmost, topmost shot for the Bangalore. And here when I personally talk, since the kind of I come from this industry, so whenever I travel, I purposely go for some time ride in the segment and I start talking to the person. He's very clear. He is a owner sometime, or he is on a rent or for daily wages. He is a basically kind of daily wager. So his expectation is very, very different. Sometimes I see the kind of product handling is very, very different. He's expecting more. So I sometimes try to provoke him that what's the kind of, you are looking at product which these manufacturers are offering to you. Now, second very important thing, I think what she said is the critical driver for the three-wheeler manufacturer, that is the range anxiety. I think we touch upon that topic. So I would like to figure it out that for this particular thing, we had done a fairly good work for the range anxiety issue, and it was a monster till now, that how to take care of this particular one. Because as a user, that definitely, once you are filling up from your natural petrol or diesel or any other fuels, you are at least sure that you are going to get that. But having said that, a kind of infrastructure, of course there is a lot of great work which has happened, but still that question is in the mind of the driver, that whether I will be able to reach to the X from the starting X to the Y. So what we have done is to at least I won't say that it's something which we have already plugged to the 100%, but we started dealing with this kind of problem as an opportunity to offer as a fast charging solution, which was, rather than having a charging which goes for a close to 2.5 hours for one particular three-wheeler after having traveled 100 or 120 kilometers. So we are offering that kind of scenario where he can travel. We have collaborated. For the sanctity of this forum, I can't disclose a name, but we have already collaborated. It's going perfectly fine, and that was launched absolutely in the Bangalore market, that it offers charging for 15 to 20 minutes. See, that is what, we are trying to deal with that scenario in an entirely different way, which is a kind of a technological input. When we started this discussion, this panel discussions, so we said that there are three interfaces which are very important for logistics. One is the sustainability aspect, then second is for the technological, and then is for the regulatory framework.
Right.
So I think we have to use somewhere, pick and choose that how it fits into the definition and how you are contributing. So that's how is for the three-wheeler scenario, which looks like.
Adding to some more, there are a couple of, specifically focusing at auto rickshaws, three-wheelers, which is passenger vehicle. So government also has come out with a couple of initiatives. As he said, there is a collaborative approach. If you go to this Ayodhya or Statue of Unity,
Right.
there they've empowered women drivers.
Right,
Yes,
right,
yes,
right.
that's true.
There are the complete package activity. What happens?
Pinkathon.
First, they'll train. They'll empower. They'll make them to ride the vehicle, and then there will be a kind of investment which comes from the government side and the manufacturer side, and then over a period of time, he or she would be owning. The driver would be owning the autos. So around 50 autos have been deployed in multiple prominent tourism places. One of the initiative is women empowerment, the other one is sustainability mission, and then the three is adaptability, focusing majorly on three-wheeler aspects.
Yes.
Pink autos or pink
It's a complete package.
package. So that is very prominent. And then, as you rightly said, in Bengaluru, almost 90% of the three-wheelers have been replaced or transformed to EV
EVs.
already. Acceptability is quite prominent.
Right.
And then the infrastructure like chai pe charge.
Right.
By the time you have chai, your rickshaw will be charged.
Yes, yes.
For a driver, chai pe charge would be, chai, how long it would get lost? 10 minutes? Within 10 minutes, fast charging would be
Absolutely.
provided.
True.
He is good to go. So that's the initiative. So as I said, what I want to reiterate is the dynamics are not one and the same for all the segments.
Agree.
It depends. Home charging is different. Captive charging is different. In the captive charging, fleet operation, four-wheeler is different.
Right.
Auto rickshaws are different. And then adding to it, corporate, the employee transportation.
That is
the,
also
the biggest of government organization replacing their spread of vehicles. So the dynamics are totally different.
totally different.
Having a standardized thumb rule which fits all the segments on the logistics part, I would say it is unicorn.
I think it should be more of a tailor-made. The organization has to
More
like you said,
customization.
more of it. Yes.
So before concluding, one last question to you, Deepak. When I look at Ather, okay, now this is a question not specific to Ather, but just trying to relate to stuff. You have two broad, kind of products in the market. One is the 450 series, and the other is Rista. So is it that today, since we have lesser number of VC combinations or SKUs, it is still relatively easy to manage, logistics when it comes to inbound, especially. As we increase the number of SKUs, do you feel, the complexity is going to further go up? Because, we are seeing demand shaping up substantially, especially on the two-wheeler front. And we'll see more vehicle chassis combinations coming in. I'm not talking about trims because, most of your parts will still remain same, barring, maybe a few aesthetic features or software related stuff. But when it comes to new platforms, you may see different vendors, newer vendors onboarded on the ecosystem. So will that, kind of lead to a change in the complexities?
The complexity definitely increases as SKUs increase, no doubt on that. But thing is that we as, in general, EV players, tier 1 companies almost are same, whoever are supplying to IC engines, apart from the electronics part, other suppliers are same, right?
Okay.
Realistically, if we see, all these players are not actually fully 100% supportive to EV industry because it's a pie that is getting moved from ICE, right?
Yes.
So they are consciously maintaining certain decisions, and the benefits which an established company, traditional ICE engine company, will receive, right? JIT or minimum inventory levels, that will not work here.
Got it.
And that is where we have
so
a
maybe
constraint.
for a startup, it may be a little
Yeah.
more difficult as compared to your legacy brands.
Yeah.
Interesting. I think, thank you for this opportunity, and I don't know if we have time for any questions from the audience or else we can wrap up.
So, if you look at the CNG story, CNG used to be very cheap compared to, I would say, less expensive compared to diesel. The moment government saw there is a traction there and the exchequer started to lose money, suddenly it got loaded with taxes because ultimately we need to earn, right? That's the balance. So what do you feel when the EV starts to pick up and suddenly you see the exchequer losing money because government earns, it's the one of the largest source of income. how it is going to impact once the charging infrastructure is in place, once we have the EVs. Now we don't have any place to run out, and suddenly the electricity charges are shot up for that, because ultimately the government need to balance it. If you see even the GST, the revenue neutral rate is not achieved still now. So how do you see that as a because I'm especially speaking from the perspective that the moment the fame is off, there is a sudden drop in the demand itself. So how do you see that as a threat? And being a supply chain leader, how do you feel you will be preparing for this kind of a long-term, I would say, risk? Long-term, when I say probably 1 to 3 years, if the traction remains very, very robust.
I think won't hesitate in saying in a couple of weeks back, things are every planned, you're doing perfectly right. You have 1 quarter only left for your financial year. You're wrapping up your numbers, your revenues, your top line, your financial numbers are doing perfectly fine. Suddenly you are coming up and there is a pop-up that the capping is gone. I'm coming to your it's a very crucial and very right part which you are addressed. The reason being, it is of course a utmost important that there has to be a proper sync. When I was deliberating, so I was keep on emphasizing that the proper sync, and it's like an orchestra. Because if this kind of scenario will happen in future, see you like me as a L5 manufacturers, I'm wrapping up my 4M conditions, man, machine, material, method. I'm scaling my numbers. But when I'm doing that, I'm assuming that government is not going to give me any jerk into this or not going to give me surprise in terms of a dropping number. See, when this kind of policy formulation, there is some sort of knee jerk or some sort of, the obstacle, it will jeopardize your entire frame in the backward integration, be it your manufacturing, be it your tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, and then the charging setup, which is on a pan-India basis. So there has to be, first of all, I would largely advocate here that there should be some sort of complete intactness of the numbers which are into the kind of policy formation for the subsidies or the regulatory framework, so that all manufacturers, I'm not limiting to my organization as an all, that all L5 manufacturers or L3 categories or L2, they should be at least relaxed in terms of their numbers, that there is not going to be any kind of, sort of variation or the disruptions. So largely I would say that once you are making your scaling up or your kind of your numbers which you are looking for some sort of further investment opportunities to be added into that. So these numbers will play important. You have to be very sure in that if some possible, because these are something, the capping of this kind of subsidies is not only which you can control, it is linked with your external framework. So you have to have some kind of, the open dialogues and making sure that there is a collaboration, you discuss, you agree for that. So otherwise, I think it will be bound to have this kind of, fluctuations.
Oh, that's the tricky thing actually. Just that, so why I'm saying it's tricky is because
Absolutely.
And the consistency of the government on the policy, especially. So if you see government आज किसान को जो मोपेड खरीदना है उस पे 28% GST लगा रहा है.
Absolutely.
EV is left out at 5%. I don't know how far it is going to be that way.
No, that's
right?
true. I fully.
So that is what I was asking. That is that a real threat, or I am perceiving it incorrectly?
No. So
No, it's absolutely. Yeah, please.
it's a threat, but you will have to look at it a little differently. Today, the government knows that there is a cost to transition to cleaner fuels or better technology. So I'll just give you an example. If you look at, say, a vehicle like Maruti Suzuki Alto, which is a mass market vehicle. If you look at, say, prices of Suzuki Alto from 2000 to 2014, on a CAGR basis, it would have hardly increased by about 1.5%, when inflation consistently was north of 5%. Why? They've added better features, vehicle has got more better, but because of economies of scale, prices have come down significantly. Today, this industry is not having any scale at this point of time. We are still very small. Though we are talking about 15% penetration in electrification of two-wheelers, it's on the scooter side, which is 35% of the overall sales. So it is 15% of 35%, which is 5%. When we talk about PVs, it is even lower, 2%. So from that perspective, we are still not reached volumes. Until then, the government is giving some kind of support to reach certain critical mass or certain volumes. Once that is there, I am sure, scale will be achieved. We will start localizing. We will be able to make it at a reasonable price. And we will be in a position to, absorb the increase which comes in because of GST or any other taxes that may get loaded. So I think this is a transitionary phase where, good planning will have to happen. I think, yes, I agree to your point that, if there is better clarity with respect to long-term policy making, it will help or it will be more productive. I don't deny that.
Yeah.
But they are trying to do it because even in PM E-Drive, if you see today, they are very clear that in the first year subsidy was X, in second year it's going to be X minus, and they have said it upfront. What I would believe is, had they said that, PM E-Drive is going to continue for 6 years, and second year it's going to be X minus, third year it's going to be X minus A, fourth year X minus B, then there is more clarity and they know that, this 28% GST is going to come back, but we'll be in a position to manage that. So I think that is something which needs more clarity. But I think otherwise, there is no reason to believe, and we'll be stupid enough to believe that, if we feel that taxes are going to remain at 5% on, kind of EVs, and, the others will continue to be at, whatever, 28 and 28 plus cess.
Adding to that, 2 points. So right now, 3 years, 4 years back, EVs, two-wheelers especially, it was more of an aspirational design.
Yes.
Right? Right now what is happening is that design is getting refined over years. And at some point of time, it will get matured and we will achieve that cost from a design product design perspective. And also we will get into more different platforms as well. That was first point. That will a little bit reduce the cost from a design perspective. Second one is, for an EV, lithium-ion cells is the highest value adder kind of a thing in
Advanced
cost.
chemistry cell.
Right, and you might be seeing a lot of articles stating that many OEMs are tying up with potential companies who are going to manufacture lithium-ion cells. So again, that is one potential where we can see some cost reduction happening as well. And OEMs are definitely cognizant of the fact that we cannot be dependent on subsidies for a long term. And that is why already certain efforts are in pipeline to bring down cost internally, so that when that happens, there will not be a big shake to the consumers.
And already I think I quickly wrap up. I think you rightly ended up saying that. See what now, even our Minister Nitin Gadkari also said in one of the interaction, he said, enough is now, it has been 10 years now, we have been hand-holding you. So somebody raised from the forum that, how do you look at kind of subsidy for the next one? He said that it's already a hand-holding. Now the baby has grown up, so little bit we are looking at manufacturers or the entire ecosystem to little bit take it forward. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time.